My name is James Milan, as Norm mentioned, and tonight we are here not formally, just to kind of introduce and have some fun with Jeff Barn, who's got lots of tales to tell, and we hope to hear a few of them from him tonight. And there's going to be an opportunity for you guys to ask questions as well. Norm already mentioned the news program that we do. And I don't know how, if you guys are here, I'm impressed with that already. We think a lot about reaching out to the community. We make a lot of effort to have people know both what we do and most importantly, what we can do and do and want to do for the community and for the individuals in that community. One of those things that we do every year is we send once a year into everybody's household a card such as the one that you guys, many of you or all of you would have received, that usually is tied into a particular event. This year we chose this particular event. And you do that and you spend the time and the money to do it, and then you just hope that somebody is going to be responding. So we're appreciative of that, but also I know from being an Arlington resident, homeowner myself, I'll get a pile of mail, I'll see something, I may or may not turn it over. I don't know if you guys turned it over when you saw it. You certainly absorbed enough information to be here tonight, and that's great. Could have done that from the first side. If you did turn it over and read what we had to say, then you'll know that Jeff has been an anchor here in Boston, in Philadelphia, in Baltimore, and also a national correspondent in Washington, D.C. So that's quite a career unto itself. To decide to make the culmination and climax of that career here in Arlington is, I assume, an object of interest for you guys as it is for me. So that's one of the things that we want to find out. The way that we're going to do things tonight is that we'll start with just watching a video of just a few highlights of Jeff's career over the years. You'll notice that he starts off as a very young man in the Amazon, not where he was born and raised, not where he was born and raised, but yes.
My dad was a very kind, very benign anaconda. So
that's right.
It's very nice, very nice.
No,
yes.
But from his broadcast journalism infancy right through to his ostensible maturity at this point.
Well, that's debatable, the maturity part.
After that, we'll just start to chat. I have a few questions that I want to ask Jeff, and Brenda and Jeff will be able to speak as well. Brenda, of course, is also a broadcast journalist herself, having worked in around New England as a professional journalist on television, and we're also lucky to have had Brenda here for several years in our news department.
And that makes her my right arm, because I was new up here in Arlington 6-7 months ago. Had to learn a new form of government. Not used to it. I usually work with mayors and city council members and freeholders in New Jersey. So to see the political arena here is truly refreshing, and Brenda has been my right-hand person at that. So
it was here 120 million years.
I guess we're going to go ahead and start.
I never interrupted myself
but
before.
I do want to add that you dove right in and took it on as if you were in D.C. This was not, like, okay, we're talking to the little people now. JB has respect for the locality in which we're covering.
Yeah, it's true. And a lot of the residents here in Arlington, I have realized, are truly attuned to what's going on with their government. And believe me, I've interviewed people on the streets of Baltimore or D.C. What do you think of Mike Pence? Who's he? So, but when I get answers back from people in
Who
Arlington,
is he, actually?
Yeah, exactly.
What's he been doing?
Actually, that could be a good question.
It is a good question right now.
But I'll talk to people from Arlington, and I can tell, wow, you read a paper, or you know the exact budget, or you know the dollar amounts. And it just seems to me that people here in Arlington are truly involved in their community. And that's something that I have found to be very rare from where I've worked. So that's a credit to Arlington, and that just one more variable and one more reason why I'm really glad to be here. So.
One last thing before we do watch the video, and that is that Norm alluded already to something that may be of interest to you guys as well, and we may want to all follow up on, and that is the fact that Jeff is in some sense a refugee here because a recent employer of his was Sinclair Broadcasting, and I don't know, are you guys all familiar with Sinclair? Yes? Yeah. Maybe a couple of no's. So do you want to give a diplomatic description of the Sinclair operation?
Sinclair is the largest network owner of local television stations nationwide. They currently own about 212 TV stations. They operate out of Hunt Valley, Maryland. It is considered local news in all those markets, from Seattle to Fresno to West Palm Beach to Portland, Maine, and everywhere in between. But they started about 10 years ago to inject their editorials in the middle of our newscast. And we had ratings where you could see exactly what's going on every quarter minute. And as soon as that editorial would come on, our viewership dropped like the Hindenburg. So our producer got smart enough to realize, well, then let's just save the editorial for the end of the show. And our ratings stayed up, which was good. But Sinclair is owned by four brothers, and the CEO is to the right of the John Birch Society. He makes MSNBC look like a right-wing Fox. And a lot of that radical right political fervor was thrown into a local newscast. So somebody watching a Sinclair station in Oklahoma City they don't know who owns the station. They just say, oh, it's Fox or ABC or NBC or CBS. It's owned by people in Maryland who want you to know that they're very right-wing. They're in bed with right now, the Trump administration. They helped, well, I could go into that later when I'm about my Washington bureau tenure for 2 years. And it was very, very hard. I got into writing. I got into journalism because I love to write. I love to tell stories. I just love to tell stories. And I'm used to anchoring in markets where, as we all know, the first 8 minutes of a newscast is not enjoyable. It's just bad news, drive-bys, fires, things like that. I like doing stories that were informative, where I would look at some research material and go, wow, I never knew that. So now I want to parlay that story into the viewer. And if the viewer at the end of my report says, gosh, I didn't know that, that is like so cool. And I did a story, I'm telling everybody about it tonight, fainting goats. I'll tell you about that later. But I always like doing stories like that, so people, they want to learn more, they want to be more informed. But my last 2 years as a national correspondent, I was basically a purveyor of propaganda. And I had it, especially after so many years of having great times, great experiences, meeting the most talented people, working hand in hand with coworkers as a team, and putting on a good program. So, but we can get back into that later. Yeah, absolutely.
Just a little flavor. And very last thing, you may be wondering what these bowling trophies are all about. And these are half of Jeff's, slightly less than half of Jeff's 13 Emmys that he also won over the course of his career. So.
And New England has been very kind to me, because I think 7 of them are from Boston and the other 6 are from the Baltimore area. So you guys are great up here. I like it up here.
All right, so without further ado, we'll just tune into either screen you'd like, or go back and forth as if you're at a tennis match, and we'll...
It was here 120 million years before man ever set foot on it.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Barnes. I'm about 5,000 miles south of Baltimore, Maryland tonight in the vast tropical rainforest of Brazil. Scientists have long described the rainforests, or jungles, as evolutionary theaters because of the vast number of plant and animal species that inhabit this region. Tonight we're going to show you just what's at stake in what some scientists are calling one of the Earth's last great survival kits. The Amazon rainforest is a long, long distance from Essex, Towson, and Ellicott City. And yet, what occurs here affects us all.
In addition, the Western world's underwriting of deforestation in the form of cattle ranching, lumber, and mining must involve sustainable development to save this land for future generations of all life. To do this, man will first have to come to an understanding with himself.
The good news amid all these warnings is it's not too late, but only if man finds an effective way to develop this land without seriously jeopardizing the other forms of life that hold the very key to man's existence. Millions of years of prehistoric history have already proven the Earth can exist without man. Now it's up to man to take action so that in the future, man does not give this planet a chance to prove it again. I'm Jeff Barn in the Amazon rainforest with photographer Scott Livingston. Good night.
The people working in and around this building have reason to be scared tonight after threatening letter bombs arrive in the mail. Close call tonight at the State Attorney General's office. 2 apparent letter bombs sent there, another sent to the new federal courthouse. I'm Stephanie Lyden. Karen is off.
And I'm Jeff Barn. Now, no one was injured, and the devices may very well be hoaxes, but the incident is raising some serious safety questions tonight. And Jim Smith is live in Boston at this hour at the AG's office. What can you tell us tonight, Jim? The World Trade Center is home to 27,000 bottles of wine as we speak. It's the Anthony Spinazzola Food and Wine Festival, and it's the biggest one ever. There's more than just vino here. There's delectable culinary delights, hoity-toity music, extravagant ice sculptures, and a silent auction. And I don't even want to know what the heck this is. But everyone seemed to have a marvelous time, some more than others. All right, Lenny's, tell me, I'm brain dead when it comes to wines. Is it red wine with meat and white wine with fish?
That's supposed to be it, yes, but I prefer red wine, so I drink it no matter what.
And what is Zinfandel for? People who are undecided whether they like red or white?
No, I'm not a Zinfandel drinker, so probably somebody in between, yeah.
Now, you'll find nothing but top-drawer wines here at the Food and Wine Festival at the World Trade Center, like this Lolanis 1995 Orpheus Petite Syrah. It's velvety, it is vibrant, and it has the proper structure to age well. It's plush and it's silky. It has overtones of vanilla and cassis. It's busy, but never precocious. So let's give it a try here. Boy, and it's darn tasty, too, I'll tell you. I wonder if they have any Boone's Farm apple wine around here. Hey, Garçon. Guy's been ignoring me all night.
This is CBS. This is a News 13 news break.
Good evening, I'm Jeff Barn. Coming up on News 13's 11 o'clock report, a life-saving operation for an 18-month-old Brunswick boy gets the green light. And it's a lively meeting in Old Orchard Beach as counselors approve a new town manager. Now this.
Hello, I'm Jeff Barn. Karen Parks is off tonight. A federal air marshal from Maryland is charged with taking cell phone photographs underneath women's skirts as they were boarding a plane in Nashville, Tennessee. Tonight, we learned this may not be the first time Adam Barsh took these types of photos. Kathleen Cairns joining us now with more on this really, really bizarre and disturbing story. Kathleen.
We're joined live by our national correspondent, Jeff Barn, on Capitol Hill. Jeff.
Good evening. This week, the most popular leader in the nation's capital would not be President Barack Obama, and he wouldn't take offense to that, nor would it be a high-ranking lawmaker. It is indeed Pope Francis. Well, the Pope has a very busy 48 hours ahead of him. Tomorrow he'll be at a welcome ceremony at the White House, and then he'll be meeting, of course, with President Barack Obama in the Executive Mansion. And, of course, as you just heard on Thursday, he will be addressing a joint session of Congress, and that's Thursday, right before he heads off to New York City. So a jam-packed 48 hours in the nation's capital for Pope Francis. I'm Jeff Barn reporting live from Capitol Hill. Back to you.
Retired neurosurgeon Dr. Ben Carson sat down with our national correspondent Jeff Barn in this exclusive interview. Dr. Carson told Jeff that he is in the race for the White House in 2016.
This was where he announced.
And I'm willing to be a part of that equation, and therefore I am announcing my candidacy for President of the United States of America.
With that, Dr. Ben Carson is off and
He's as
running.
excited
He
about
rose
it
from
as we
poverty
were.
in Detroit to the head of the pediatric neurosurgery department at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore.
I think we're in a severe problematic situation.
Dr. Carson's own words at times have caused controversy in recent months regarding Obamacare and homosexuality. Now that you've announced you're running for President of the United States, moving it forward and raising that level, what have you learned from those experiences?
Don't wander off into those extraneous areas that can be exploited. I have learned that.
Early national polls place Dr. Carson above more established Republicans such as Governor Chris Christie and Senator Marco Rubio, but behind Senator Rand Paul and former Governor Jeb Bush. I'm Jeff Barn reporting.
Hello, I'm Alex Trebek. The category is Outstanding News Coverage, and here's a clue for you. This news team is the most honored in Baltimore.
What is Fox 45 News?
You are correct, Jeff.
And now I have one for you.
Okay.
This quiz show is the most honored in television history.
What is Jeopardy?
You are correct.
The most honored news team and the most honored quiz show every weeknight, right here on Baltimore's Fox 45.
I got sunshine. Oh yeah. On a cloudy day. Yeah. I need help. When it's cold outside, I got the month of May. Oh, baby. I guess you say what can make me feel this way, my girl. Talking about my girl. I wanted to keep going here, and they had to go. I got bees and bees. That's all right. All right.
Hey, let's do it. Hey, we finally got a white temptation.
Oh, yeah! That's what I wanted. That was my dream.
Nice.
There we go.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yes.
You get
so
to do a lot of cool stuff when you, obviously, when you're in news. You know, you have the tragic stuff, obviously, but sometimes you get lucky enough to sit on the front lines of what later becomes history, and you don't realize it at the time.
Yeah, so just briefly, and we'll do it briefly because we want to get into some other stuff, but
Yeah.
how did you even get going
in broadcasting?
In broadcasting?
I have a textile marketing degree where I had to take organic chemistry and stuff because the textiles dyeing and finishing, Scotchgard. And I was halfway through with my college career, and I'm thinking, I don't want to do this. I want to become a broadcaster. So I figured, well, maybe I can transfer my credits to Temple University, which is a really good broadcasting school in Philadelphia. I was going to school at the Philadelphia College of Textiles and Science. And they said, organic chemistry for broadcasting? That ain't happening. So, and I went to textile because my father said, I know you want to get into broadcasting, but you always need something to fall back on. My father was Mr. Practicality, so it's like, you know what, he's right. And at the time, we had the ABC, NBC, and CBS affiliates in market number 4, which is Philadelphia, the fourth largest TV market in the country. And so I'm up against, what, 8 anchors? Because they didn't really have that big of a morning show because that was coming from New York. You had to worry about the 6 and the 11. So I'm talking maybe 6 to 8 anchors that I want to vie for their job. And anyway,
I had a fallback option.
Yeah, I had a fallback option, but I got a job as a salesperson for it was a country music station in Atlantic City, New Jersey. So I'm trying to sell country music to Goodfellas, okay? And it didn't sell well, but that's what kept me going as far as the salary and the commission was concerned. And they had tryouts for an 11 o'clock anchor to complement their female anchor. And so I started to anchor, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was a reader. And so the news director there, I kept saying, I really want to go out and I like telling stories. I want to learn how to report. And he said, kid, you're a reader. Shut up. Just come in and read. And I decided, well, I'm not going to learn anything here. This was in Atlantic City, a very small NBC affiliate in Atlantic City. And I decided to send resume tapes out. I told him I was on sales calls. And I was with a camera. And so I did 3 stories. I put them on a resume tape. I sent them through the mail, and I got a job at the ABC affiliate in Bangor, Maine. And I got the job, and that was where I cut my teeth. I learned how to, first of all, I didn't know how to type. You know, it's like...
You still don't.
I don't. You're right. Yeah, you share the office with me. But it's like, why isn't it A, B, C, D, E, F, G? What the hell? Who designed this? So I learned how to do a lot of stuff in Bangor, but it was such an education. Then I went from there to Philadelphia as a general assignment reporter. But when you start out as an anchor, that gives you very little reporting experience. And Philadelphia and it was the #1 station in Philadelphia, and you had to do 2 reports a day. So I was pretty much just thrown to the wolves. But I learned so much there. And then after that, Baltimore, Portland, Maine, Boston, and Baltimore, and Washington, and here.
And here,
So, yeah.
right. So lots and lots of places. So I think we saw probably a few of the highlights from your career, like highlights as far as you're concerned as well, some of the really fun stuff that you did.
Yeah, yeah.
But tell us about a couple of things that we didn't see in any of those videos that are,
like
you know,
what?
just stuff that either
Like
either mistakes that you made or
James.
lessons you learned.
James, I defy you to find any mistake I've ever made on the air.
Yeah, that's
37
right.
years, I have never made a mistake.
Yeah, that's.
I worked for an NBC affiliate in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, and I had to do a satellite interview with Tom Brokaw. And there's two monitors just like this, and I could see me here, and I sat down, and I'm getting ready to do a satellite interview with Tom Brokaw about the gangs rising in L.A. So I'm sitting there, and the other monitor was empty. It had an empty chair. So I'm thinking, well, that's Tom's chair. So Tom's not ready. So they said, before we do an interview, can we get a mic check so we can get a mic level with you? And I always liked imitating Tom Brokaw. So I figured I'd be smart and said, good evening, live from Lillehammer tonight. Welcome to NBC News. I'm Tom Brokaw, and we're going to be going to Lily Langtree. And the guy in my ear's going, idiot, he can hear you. And then I looked at the monitor, it was in the wrong monitor, and then all of a sudden he was there, and he's kind of like, never got another job at NBC again.
Yeah.
So,
How did the interview go?
Oh, it went well because I'm like Ralph Cramden, hamina. You know, now that he knew what I did, but he handled it very, very well, and I hear nothing but nice things about him. So,
So what was the balance for you? You've already alluded to it, but you said, you know, there's a lot of heavy stuff and a lot of, you know, we all know, right? We all, many people I know are tired of watching television news because of what we all think is the unrelenting kind of stream of bad news and graphic, you know, gory, yucky, et cetera. So you're there and exposed to that all the time. Right, or this, right.
And it's getting worse.
Right. So overall, though, how did you find that balance over the years between that and the stuff that you really, you know, were into and like to do and enjoyed, you know, temptation stuff, etc.
I think the news directors like the fact that an anchor, because I got to be honest with you, I've worked in markets where the anchors would do the 6 o'clock news. They'd go out for a 3-hour dinner at the Four Seasons and then come back and do the 11, not writing their own stuff, having producers do all their work for them, and they just read and they make $1 million and go home in their Porsche Boxsters. And I couldn't do that. It would drive me crazy. First of all, it would be a long day, and I can't afford eating at the Four Seasons every night. So I would like to go out. And when I would approach my news director and say, hey, you know, I have this great story. This was in Baltimore. Edgar Allan Poe is buried in Baltimore. Philadelphia has a Poe house, and Ed Poe wrote a lot of works in Philadelphia. Philadelphia wants the body exhumed from Baltimore and sent to Philadelphia. And the Poe house in Philadelphia has the Raven, has this big Raven statue. That's why the Baltimore Ravens are called the Ravens. It's the only NFL team named after a poem. But so it's a fight over the bodies. And I got to go to Philadelphia, talk to the curator, got to talk to the curator in Baltimore, and the curator said, over my dead body, which I'm thinking.
So to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And it's Edgar Allan Poe. It's macabre. It's perfect. It's a perfect story. The weird thing is, he wrote The Raven in New York, so I don't know why it's called, you know, the Baltimore Ravens and, you know, or the Baltimore Giants and the New York Ravens. But I got to do stories like that, and they would let me have the time to do stories like that and let it breathe. And it's just stuff that when I find, I'm going, I never knew that. This is fascinating. This is a story I want to tell. And my boss, they were very generous. And, you know, at times they would say, you don't have to do the 6 if you're going to be, you don't have to anchor the 6 if you're going to be out doing the story. Another one was the Ouija board. There is a 4-story brick structure in Baltimore. It's still there. It was the Ouija board factory. It was the Ouija board factory. And, you know, Bird's Eye Maple was brought in from Wisconsin. It was an art piece as a game, but it, you know, spooky overtones. And the owner of the Ouija board, his name was William Fold, went out on the roof one day, perfect day, in May, to plant an American flag. Next thing they knew, he fell off the roof of his company, 4-story company, grabs onto a window, couldn't hold on, and died. And they just thought it was cursed from that time forward. Well, he also had an annex where some of the games were made, and it's now a funeral parlor. So I'm thinking, another fantastic story, you know.
One thing that, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to explain that, you know, James and some people may not realize, but as an anchor, when you're the anchor, you don't have to have that top story where you're going and pursuing, you know, talking about something that you don't necessarily want to talk about. When you're the anchor, you get to do the kinds of stories that you really want to do.
Exactly.
But as a general assignment reporter, you have to go and do the latest fire or
Right.
whatnot. And some people really do like that and get the adrenaline rush.
They
and it's
do.
good for a while. But for me, like I got burnt out
Yeah.
from that, you know, and
Yeah.
going and pestering people and trying to get them to, you know, talk to us about how they feel about their, you know, loved one just being, you know, murdered.
Yeah, well, that's the bone that was thrown to me. I knew the first 8 minutes were going to be bad in Baltimore, but to do stories like the Ouija board and to do, there's so many. If you're football fans at all, the Baltimore Colts, it used to be the Baltimore Colts. Irsay, the owner, was crazy. Apparently a deal with the city to build a new stadium fell through, and Irsay said, well, I'm taking my team out of here. And they literally left on a snowy night in 1987, and Baltimore woke up to no NFL team, which was an absolute stunner. They were coming the next day for the Baltimore Colts marching band uniforms. And I knew the guy's name is John Zeman. He heads up the Baltimore Colts marching band. He said, these are not going to Indianapolis. So he had a good dry cleaning friend who took care of all the uniforms. They packed, in the middle of the night, packed a dry cleaner truck full of the Baltimore Colts marching band uniforms. And they didn't know where to hide it. And then they're realizing lawfully, if it's in my house, I could be held liable. So we got to put this somewhere where no one knows anything. They took the dry cleaning truck to a family friend in the middle of a cemetery and opened up a mausoleum and threw the Baltimore Colts marching band uniforms in the mausoleum, and they stayed there for 6 months. And Irsay they were trying to sue the band, and they're going, maybe the dry cleaner lost it. We don't know.
When did you get that story? After the 6 months?
Yeah. I didn't want to go to jail
you
either.
Didn't get the
story. I did not want to go to jail either. But
local affiliates aren't sent to the Amazon anymore.
Right.
You know,
right.
and so tell us about that.
Yes,
that was a marvelous story because not the fact that I did it. It was just a great story. It was during the 1992 Rio Summit. So we flew from Miami to Rio to cover some of the summit. The world leaders were coming there.
You were working for Baltimore at the time?
Yeah, I was at Baltimore at the time. And I flew down to Rio to cover some of the Air Summit, get some sound bites. A lot of indigenous tribes were there. We talked to them with a translator. Then they enabled us to fly to Manaus, which is the largest city in the Amazon rainforest, go down about 60 miles down the Rio Negro, which merges with the Amazon. And we were there for 2 weeks. And then they let us fly back to Rio for the end of the summit. So George
and by we, you mean just you and your camera person?
Just my camera person, yeah. Oh, I got a funny story to tell you. They also would send me to Singapore. They sent me to Singapore. In 1994, there was a kid from America who was living in Singapore who stole street signs. And his name was Michael Fay, and he was going to be caned as a result of it. And Bill Clinton got involved, saying, can we limit the number of canings? Well, one of the owners of the TV station said, do you want to fly to Singapore and see if that judicial process could work here? Because you would get fined for spitting gum on a sidewalk, not flushing a toilet in a public restroom. I mean, these guys were strict. But we were able to go there just to see if the judicial process or the way law enforcement is meted out there could work here. And the one thing that fascinated me about that story was they had cameras taking pictures of cars going through red lights so that you'd be mailed a ticket. And back in 1994, here, that was unheard of. And now we have it. Yeah. But we were over. But the fact that I went with just the photographer, he had a Panasonic. It was called Pro. I forget the style of camera. Anyway, it's a very rare style camera. We get there, and the camera breaks. Now we're half a planet away. They flew us out there, and I had to reschedule some interviews. And my photographer, Bill Sawyer, he's in Pittsburgh now. He's such a resourceful, great guy, and we're still lifelong friends. Said, they have a Panasonic company here in Singapore. Yeah. Let me take the camera, and those guys want to work on it because they want to see this format because it's new for them too. So they're gonna learn from this. So I'm not technically inclined. I need instructions to change a flat. So Bill, he said, "You want to go?" And I went, no, you guys go, because I don't know what I'm looking at. I'd probably ruin it anyway. So we're staying at the Hilton, and as they're fixing the camera for 3 days, I'm upstairs at the pool on the rooftop of the Hilton Hotel on Orchard Road,
working hard,
praying for Bill Sawyer. But he got it fixed. And so when you go with only 2 people, you have to be very resourceful. And a lot of the network said everybody over. But it was kind of cool to straighten that problem out by ourselves, or should I say Bill's self, because I got a tan though that time was. But went to Rome. I saw the elevation of a cardinal in Baltimore. He was being elevated to Archbishop. He was being elevated to cardinal. So got to go to St. Peter's, and I've just done a lot of stories that were just went to Iraq, Kuwait City, Bahrain. I was on the Carl Vinson, which is an aircraft carrier. Got to take off on an aircraft carrier. I got to see a sortie at 3 a.m. And in the distance, you see these jets taking off, and at 3 a.m. in the far distance, you're looking at the oil fields of Saudi Arabia. So it's just, I always thought, you go to college and you pay money to learn. And what's so great about my job is I was getting paid to learn. And I think travel is one of the greatest educational experiences anybody can have. So they were the stories that I really enjoyed doing too.
Well, I want to eventually refocus us onto Arlington specifically and hyperlocal news, both of your observations about that, et cetera. But before we do that, we'll already open the door. I wanted to invite everybody, if you have questions about Jeff's career before he got here, what we've been talking about so far, by all means, please speak up.
You answered the question about so how did you get here? Like your CV, but what is it elementally about you? Like, was it a performance, Jones? I mean, we saw you singing.
Yeah.
What is it about?
I think it's a little of both, to tell you the truth. You know what? My major joy is writing. Yeah. I love to write. I write on my off time. I think it's very relaxing. I just, if an idea hits me, I'll start writing. At 1 o'clock in the morning, sit on the couch with a laptop and just see what I can do.
But not all writer types enjoy being in front of a camera. That's
and you know what? I got to be honest with you. Sometimes it was very difficult for me to do that. That was not my main love. And I think if you want to be in front of the camera and that's your only goal, to be a broadcaster, you're not going to last long. And I've known a lot of people like that who, I knew a Mr. Jersey one time from Atlantic City. They had a Mr. New Jersey. He wanted to be an anchor, and I haven't heard from him since. Yeah. So. But that's a very good question. But I really like the writing. I can't stand cliches, and every day, all of us, and you, your wordsmith, and you being in the news business as long as you have, lucky to be alive, really, totally destroyed. If it's destroyed, it's totally. Brutally murdered. I've never known anyone who was kind-heartedly murdered. It's stuff like that that just drives me bonkers when I watch a newscast, and you'll see it on 5, 7, and 4 here. You'll see it at 6, 3, and 10 in Philadelphia. Writing, it's not only, and to write for TV is a lot different than, obviously, print. But you have to be concise, direct, you have to make sure you're right. And if there is any room for creativity with, certain stories, then by all means do it, as long as the facts aren't skewed. But that's one of the most enjoyable parts of my job is writing, and having the chance to allow a story to breathe. And lately, if you're looking at a lot of local newscasts, you're going to see minute 15 stories. You're not going to see 2-minute stories anymore. You got to give a story time to breathe.
You have to go read the print version if you want to know more. You're just getting highlights.
Yeah. What is that? Let me go to the website. Let me read the newspaper or whatever. And it's really not fair. When I was a national correspondent, my stuff had to be 2:15 tops. Whether it was Hillary's emails or whether it was Donald Trump and Billy Bush's conversation in the bus just prior to the election, everything had to be 2:15. And you go to a bookstore and you read Tolstoy. There's there are a lot of pages, but then you read Bennett Cerf and it's like 60 pages. Well, why can't we all just have the same books, the same pages? And that's what drives me crazy when I'm watching local news anymore. So. There's been a lot of changes in local news that I think have become too It's almost like the superhero movies, and I'm not putting them down. It's more substance and swooshing and lights and all this.
Less substance, I think.
Less substance, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
More.
And is that what I said? Less substance?
You said more substance. You said
That's, thank God you're here.
That's what I'm here
Yeah,
for.
less substance, and more flash. And it's like, what are we, what's it about? And then they have all this stuff saying, live, local, late breaking, we're here for you. And it's like,
You have to watch to the B block.
yeah.
And the C block still. They still have, good features.
Good stories.
Yeah. Otherwise, we wouldn't be this. And I also I educate first-year students at Emerson as an adjunct professor. So I'm seeing the new people coming in. And why they're coming in is, slightly a cliche as well, but they want to be a voice for the voiceless. So they don't, some of them, they think they can be writing for Rolling Stone the next year or something, or they don't have to start out in local news. I don't need to know about politics. But a lot of them are also, they want to do stories that, we're hearing more about. And most of them, even though Emerson, I went there and it was started off as an oratory college, a lot of them are there for text, for print. And I try to sway them, or just by showing them powerful, moving stories, such as, a series on suicide that you just can't hear and see the emotion of parents grieving their child that you get from a text, from online newspaper, however you read your text.
Have you ever, in your travels, have you ever run into people who said, you have to interview this guy and he is a terror. This is not going to be enjoyable for you. Have you ever had that opportunity?
That the person says that they're a terror?
That someone who works at the TV station says, Brenda, you got to go out and interview this guy, and this guy's got a horrible reputation, so just put on your armor and just get ready. Have you ever had that?
No, I don't think I've had any forewarning. I've certainly interviewed people that are a terror, but I haven't been warned about it.
I think I'd rather have that, because I've been warned, but some of the people who I'm warned about turn out to be great interviews.
Mm-hmm.
So you
or
just,
they don't give you much. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that, you're very yourself. And you're not one of those, and for me, like, I just try to get on that person's level, whatever level they may be, and just, and if they aren't opening up and talking, then you just find out what makes them tick. Get them talking about that, and then we'll slowly segue into what we're supposed to be talking about.
Right. And it's also easier if you want to get somebody's soundbite. Keep the camera away. Cameras are intimidating, so I would keep that in the car or the truck or with the photographer. And I'd go up and bang on the door and say, hey, would you like to talk about this? I understand if you don't want to talk about this, but it seems less imposing.
And you've been doing that here as well, as a way to go out and meet people.
I don't want any Arlington resident beating me up and winding up in the Advocate. First of all, I work for a very radically right corporation. So half the Democrats in the Capitol are not going to talk to me. You work at Sinclair. I'm not talking to you. They didn't know me as a person, but...
Because they were scared that use something
that we would skew, and they did. So I mean, I don't blame them. But three things I heard every day: the powers that be, all 12 white men sitting around a table in Hunt Valley, Maryland, would have their own ideas for the stories, but you had to pitch a story idea every morning. And I would say, well, we had Donald Trump had a pretty bad day with Billy Bush in a bus the other day. No. I want you to go to Judicial Watch and talk to, I forget the president of Judicial Watch, and talk about Hillary emails. There were three things. I was telling James just the other day, I heard three things every single day in that D.C. bureau. Hillary emails, Benghazi, Sharia law, because the CEO of Sinclair believes that we will be worshiping and facing Mecca within 5 years. And it was just craziness. And some of the stories I was doing was nuts. So
where do you see the partisanship going in news?
I honestly, I have to be honest with you, I think it's getting worse. I watch MSNBC for about a half an hour. I watch Fox for about a half an hour. And that I'm trying to meet in the middle, and then I'll watch CNN. However, I'm not too fond of CNN's primetime lineup. I always like Chris Wallace. He's a Philly boy, so I always like, or not Chris Wallace. Who's the guy? I'm sorry? No, oh my gosh, Chris Matthews. And I always like him. He's very interesting, and I like his books. So I've read a few of his books. Sinclair, as I said, is to the right of Fox. Now, Fox, Rupert Murdoch has stepped down, so Fox doesn't have the stigma of being as right as he used to be. And they've recently hired people like Donna Brazile and a lot of people from the Democratic side to clash, and I'm all for that as long as it's respectable. So Fox may actually be changing its tune, but I just find it so divisive, and I always thought that it's how can you alienate half your audience? You know, if you just, like Walter Cronkite, I never knew Johnny Carson's political leanings, and he was one of the most powerful men on earth at one time. I never knew what he made fun of Reagan, he made fun of Carter, he made fun of everybody. But now it seems like all this late night talk show stuff, it's all, I mean, if I watch Colbert, I'm just going to get a bunch of Trump imitations, and Jimmy Kimmel, it'll probably be the same thing. So I don't watch that anymore, late night TV, which I used to like to unwind. But the primetime news programs, I really don't hold them in much regard. I like NPR, coming to work. I love NPR. Then I'll listen to BZ Radio, and I gotta be honest with you, I like BBC News. Because I like, it's way more objective, and it's less opinionated. You know, when, I don't care who voted for who in the election of 2016, but when you see an anchor crying because Donald Trump won, it's like, I feel your pain, because I think we've all voted for people who, oh my God, my candidate lost, and you feel terrible the next day. But for an anchor to cry on television over this, I think that's a little over the top. So I see a lot of divisiveness continuing, and I'm telling you this right now, with what's going on with 2016, 2020 is going to be worse. The election of 2016 is the main reason I got out. I had gone through 9 presidential general elections in my career, and that one was, I'd had enough.
You mean before the vote itself?
Before the vote itself, yeah. And after the vote, because then Sinclair's going, oh, our boy's in. So then the CEO actually went to the White House and said, all right, here's how we could lay out, here's how Sinclair can help, and everything else. So that's kind of alarming to do something like that.
Could I ask you something about Arlington?
Yeah.
When I catch the news, I love it. I'm really impressed.
Our news?
Yes.
Oh, great.
ACMi. But I'm wondering how you. Oh, Jeff, I'm glad you're here.
Jeff,
But
you
I-
lost your microphone.
That's okay. It was worth the hug.
That was
Oh, I know.
so.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you, and I tend to do that.
I love hugs. That's great.
So do I.
How do you? It's hard to find it. I mean, it's hard to. My life moves so fast. How do I find it? And how do you get, there must be people like me. Facebook I use for my own business marketing and stuff, so I kind of catch stuff on there, and I caught this thing tonight. So I'm wondering what your plans are to get Arlington behind this news program and aware of it.
I think you can probably go
Right.
with the social
It's something
media
that,
thing.
it's just that we're a small nonprofit. So if we said, oh, give me money and resources, and you'll know exactly where we are and when we are. But the biggest thing that I could say right now is that something that the easiest way to find us if you're not actually watching, flipping by channel 26 or whatever it may be, or if you're not in the habit of going to our website, or it didn't get up on Facebook that week, is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Because then that, if you allow it to, will push out to your phone when we have segments, when we have a newscast.
Yeah.
So that's my new marketing plan.
That's the best thing. That's the most automated thing. But you can also always find content there.
What can we do to propagate this?
Well, then, if you are on social media, then when we do post things, if you like our page, then you should be able to. It should populate in your news feed somewhere, and then just sharing it, and that's a strategy as well that I've gone. When I can, I try to get away from just putting the link up there. I'll have a lot more views if I put the actual you probably don't know this terminology, but I put the raw MOV up there, and it auto plays just like your friends, short little clips will, and that gets people's attention a lot more. A lot of people are going to Instagram, and that's more pictures, not that we can't put our whole newscast. We can do short videos on there. So it is something that we're aware of, but I think there's also things where we could do actual, being in physical presence as well. Pop-up newsrooms, having a showing at the Common Ground. They have a nice big screen there, and we invite everyone, or we do things like that. So those are things that we're thinking about, but we're also thinking about covering a story each week too. So that's where we're at. We're front loaded, but we're not back loaded right now.
And that's where I'd like to pick up, because I would love more people to get involved in our news operation, simply because
we take volunteers.
We do take volunteers.
And we'll take a volunteer social media strategist.
I worked for 36 years, never picked up a camera in my life.
That's right.
And I got here, and so many great techs who work here, and they're so patient and so nice. Taught me how to shoot, taught me how to edit, and editing for me was very intimidating. Helped me appreciate all those people in the past that I worked with.
He's a quick learner, in case you haven't already figured that out.
Well, it's just fun, and I wanted to learn it. But it's real easy to really, I mean, if you are somewhere and you see something happening, it's real easy just to use your phone and just take video and then send it to ACMi.tv. Is that what it is?
Well, what you can do is you can send us an email, and then we can send you a link to our Dropbox.
Right.
Oh, that's cool.
And then you could say, yes,
potentially,
and we would credit you. What's cool about here is we are not beholden to stockholders. That's the bottom line for any local TV station or network, is the bottom line. In the old days, the news department was a money-losing proposition. It was a given. It was a write-off. It was a liability to the TV station. But it was the community identifier. Mm-hmm. And it's just as the years have gone on, I'm thinking, all these commercial breaks and the longer commercial breaks and the less ratings they're getting, which is why you're seeing these extended newscasts now. That's why in Boston you have local news from 4:30 to 6:30, because they're trying to grab the same amount of ratings they used to get in the old days between 6 and 6:30. And I thought it was getting a little ridiculous when I forget where I was, but I closed captioning brought to you by KO Pectate. And it's like... And I'm thinking to myself, we're really advertising? I mean, we're going to, the next soundbite from this politician will be brought to you by Wells Aid. And it's like, come on, man, it's getting too commercial.
It was like 7. They'll send somebody to do like a dog rescued from a manhole cover in Miami or something.
Yes.
Because it's like
good video. It's not necessarily the most important story.
Now. They're in a different territory altogether.
But the others do it too, they just...
It's not necessarily the most important story in Boston, but darn it, we got a guy being saved from a sewer.
Right. It's because they have video.
I call it surfing squirrel video.
Cell phones and video cameras everywhere are changing this a little bit, and I think it'll ride out eventually. I think eventually we'll grow tired of that and realize just because we have the video doesn't mean we need to do this story.
You know what? I respectfully disagree. I think it's going to get worse because I think it's like holding
I'm forever hopeful.
A little lure in front of it going, look, come here, little fishy, come here. If you walk into a lobby at Channel 4 and say, hey, I'd like to do a story, they're going to tell you to do just UE and leave. This is your TV station. This is a community TV station. And if you feel there's anything newsworthy, sometimes we can help shoot it for you. Or you can come in and learn how to shoot and learn how to edit.
We've had some volunteers who, and one right now who's done some things with Arlington Education Foundation, and we've worked together on seeing which stories would be most visual, and he's going out and pursuing them himself with some of our supervision.
It's unusual that we have someone with your gravitas and experience who's...
Oh, do I have you bamboozled? Oh my gosh!
No, it is unusual. It is unusual, which is why we were wanting to do this evening because it doesn't happen all the time. It wouldn't necessarily have happened here, even with the resources that we have. But I'm glad that you brought it up. Will and I were talking before this all began. And it really is true that here in Arlington we are unusually lucky in terms of the resources that we have. You may or may not know that we have 3 cable providers in town. as opposed to 2 or 1 in most towns and cities in Massachusetts. You may or may not know that the cable providers are the ones who fund us. They don't do it willingly. They do it reluctantly, but nonetheless they do it, and they're contractually obliged to keep doing it for some period of time. That makes our situation really, really great here in that it means that, as Jeff was saying, we don't have shareholders that we are beholden to who are going to tell us or try and influence what it is that we do in terms of content or anything else. And it means that we have more resources, frankly, than many other similarly situated stations in other towns and cities in Massachusetts. Those resources we can use to focus exclusively on our mission. And our mission is to educate folks just like you to whatever degree you want, and to inform and connect everybody throughout Arlington. Nonprofits, make sure that people understand what services they provide. Arts institutions and organizations, et cetera, make sure that people are aware of them. As Jeff was talking before about arts and culture reporter that we're looking for, we want to make sure that people understand that there's a new restaurant in town and where it's at and what is up, any nice stories that might be told about that. Frankly, we're doing that on our news, and we have some other, and we have public affairs programming here, which is news, news type stories, or at least subject matter, but we're able to take much deeper dives into those things. So you'll find interviews in our public affairs division. You'll find a bunch of different series, but those series involve interviews, sit-down interviews with all kinds of people in Arlington or even outside of Arlington that are fascinating unto themselves, but also that are going to give you useful information that you can then access websites and other things that we give you links to further increase your understanding or your awareness of that particular issue or whatever. These are the things that we get to focus on instead of having to worry about fundraising and advertising and keeping people happy that we don't necessarily agree with or whatever. So we delight in that. We are all very happy employees here. We don't get paid a lot of money, but otherwise we have a great situation here. And we want to embrace you guys, and then 2 or 3 times this amount, and then 2 or 3 times that amount, et cetera, as much as we possibly can, because we really genuinely, honestly feel like we've got something great here to offer. And I just want to finish that little thing, sorry, by saying Jeff pointed out earlier that he had never done any camera work, any of the behind-the-scenes work. He'd always been the face in the front of the camera after many decades, and he came here and threw himself into it. The fact is, though, that he, like we are beyond the steep learning curve parts of our lives on the whole, right? Most of the time, it's a little bit harder for us to take on something new and et cetera. And yet, I think you can attest to the fact that this place, the vibe here, the resources here, the expertise of the people make it easy to do. And I just want to say that for any of you guys who have any kind of interest at all, it's the same story for you. We will be happy to work with you in any way and capacity that you are comfortable with or interested in. And we'll do that as convivially as possible.
This particular facility is a mirror to all of you. It's a mirror to all of you and anyone who lives in Arlington. And again, it's your TV station. You don't have to worry about the sponsorships. What I enjoy about it, especially after being in Washington, D.C., I don't have to be a purloined propagandist anymore from the CEO of the company. They leave you alone here. Yeah, for the most part, you know, they want to see the guidance, but it's like, hey, that's a great idea. Well, let's try it, you know, and then we try it, and sometimes, well, you know what, it was halfway there. Let's try something else next week. But it's healthy to work with a bunch of people who truly enjoy coming into work every day. And I can guarantee you, for 2 years in Washington, I was not looking forward to getting back to work every day. And a lot of people say, well, why didn't you quit? Well, okay, a Sinclair broadcast contract is about 16 pages long. And if I were to prematurely quit, I would have to owe them the money that remains on the contract. So, I mean, how many people can do that? So, anyone familiar with the Deadspin video that came out from Sinclair last year, where they had all the anchors reading the same script?
Yeah.
That was written by the CEO of Sinclair, and they're all the anchors. And I'm still friends with anchors, obviously. They were livid that they had to read that. But, you know, mortgage, 2 cars, kids, school. What are you going to do? And I remember Mika Brzezinski on the Morning Joe. She said, well, why don't they just quit? Well, that's why. I heard her say that. And it's like, you should have done your research before you said something like that. But whatever is left on your 2-year contract, you owe the company if you quit. And they take you to court. And they play hardball. So you remember the John Kerry Swift Boat special in 2004, the controversy during that? It came out 2 weeks before Election Day. I hosted it. So, and that was tough to do. And the reason why they wanted me to do it is because I worked up in Boston and I interviewed John Kerry up here many, many times. And I was praying. I had a bag. They were going to fly me anywhere so I can get the interview. And really, I wish to heck he would have allowed me to interview him. I really think it would have helped his campaign. But it's just stuff like that. And it seemed to me as though it was post 9/11 that stuff started to rear its ugly head. Because in the beginning with Sinclair, like I said, Singapore, Rome, Prague, Amazon, Kuwait, Bahrain, aircraft carriers. That was
And that was all with Sinclair as well?
That was with Sinclair. But after 9/11, things, even with the, I was embedded with the Navy Seabees in the Middle East, so that wasn't so bad. But I did all these stories that they wanted me to do from 1991 to 95, went to Boston. Sinclair only owned 3 stations at the time. I come to Boston, work for Tribune Broadcasting. They're for sale. They sold the Channel 7, so I got off the Titanic there, came back and got my old anchor seat back, and they own 175 TV stations. So I left a family-owned operation, and I came back to Enron. So it was a culture shock. So,
and now you're back to family.
And now I'm back to family, man. I love you, man. This place spurs creativity. It encourages creativity. And I think since I've been here, I've been pretty pleased with what I've been seeing with the newscast. I want to take it, another step further and take it to another a level. And that's my goal to be here. But, anchoring as long as I did, reporting as long as I did, I think it's great to round out my career, winding up being not only a news director, but also teaching young kids who are coming up next. They're the next generation of journalism, and God bless them. We need them now more than ever. Yeah. So I always wanted to teach, and I get to do that too here. So, and we have great interns. We had Moses. I had an intern anchor tonight. You'll hear about him in about 10 years in LA or something. And Liza Lee has just been so nice.
She's helping us right here.
So is that Liza? Wave,
control room right
there you
now.
go.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it's hands-on experience. And I have worked at TV stations where, you have some people coming in saying, well, I want to work for Channel 6 Action News in Philly. Well, where did you work before? Nowhere. Oh, so you want to start at the #1 station in the 4th largest TV market in the country. What did you do before? I was an intern. Where? KYW in Philadelphia. I'm thinking, okay, that's a union shop, so I know you got coffee for the anchors and the producers. You did nothing. And here you get hands-on experience. And every one of you can get hands-on experience. All you have to do is, if you'd like, just show up. And it took me about 2 days to go through these classes to kind of know the camera. I'm still learning it, but I'm getting there. But it's a challenge again. It's not burnout, and I'm not spreading propaganda in Washington for some reincarnation of Joe McCarthy. So, and at any time we do our newscast between 3 and 5 on Thursdays, if any of you want to come in and just sit there in the control room.
That's where we have our most volunteers. Is then
3 and 5 on Thursday.
3 and 5 on Thursday.
Roughly.
We'll set up the news set. We do it from there, and you can just see how it runs. You're more than invited. You're more than welcome to come in.
And if you want to get your fingers on something, it will not take long.
Yeah, I even got my fingers on the soundboard during election night, and people in Arlington actually heard who won. It's like, so wow, that's kind of cool. So, but it really has been a pleasure to have you, and it's nice to meet each and every one of you.
Thank you so much for coming out.
Yeah, and taking the time to
Really.
come out. Thank you very much.